So we are now going to close our executive session and open the public meeting for the Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, August 9th, 2020. I'd like to start off by welcoming everybody to the building, here. And we'll start the session. We'll call. Commissioner Briscoe, are you with us? Commissioner Briscoe, are you with us? Commissioner Briscoe, are you there? Oh, so with Commissioner Briscoe not here, just talk amongst yourself. Make yourself at home.
Yeah, that's him.
He's muted. Why don't you unmute him?
Bobby, are you with us?
How about now?
There we go.
There we go.
Hello.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
Here.
This is Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Briscoe is the president of this commission. I just want to say I'm standing in his stead because he is out making a living in the open waters. Although I heard motorcycles behind you, Bobby, at one point.
Well, that's because I had to come to town to get service, and I'm standing downtown in a little visitors area here, and it's the only place we got service, and it's right in the middle of town. Everybody's driving around, so sorry about that. I try to stay muted.
Downtown what?
But thank you for running the meeting, Wrangell, Alaska.
Wrangell, Alaska. All right, we're going to start the meeting with public comments. Anybody wishing to speak before this commission on any matter on this agenda or off this agenda, just feel free to take the mic. We are limiting comments to 3 minutes. I have a couple of people that want to speak that have signed up. Anybody else online or in the building that wishes to speak, just raise your hand or make yourself known and we will add you to the list. The first one is going to be Wendy. And just state your name and where you're from and again, we are at a 3-minute time limit on the conversations. And
just tell me when.
Oh, you'll hear it.
Okay. So my name is Wendy Shearer. I live at 1905 Larrabee in the South Side, near where Bobby Briscoe grew up. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to address the board mill building proposals. I've emailed you my thoughts. The Bellingham Herald Public's Opinion poll about the 4 proposals for the board mill building, I see that the YMCA's proposal got a 55% support from the community. Now I understand the port staff has supported another proposal, the one from Haven Design, and the decade-old idea of a convention center and a hotel is persisting. I ask the question to you, port commissioners, do we really need another hotel? Do we really need a convention center on this very prime piece of real estate? Isn't this beautiful site better suited for local folks to use as a community facility to promote education, youth to elder age programming for recreation, swimming schools, water safety, sports, and wellness? Don't we want our citizens to be able to walk down from our neighborhoods, down from the waterfront, from the Maritime Heritage Park, throughout the seasons for outdoor and indoor destinations? I believe that a beautiful YMCA facility on the waterfront is a great idea. There are so many win-win benefits for this proposal. We need to think a little bit outside the box to ask our community, could the port work collaboratively with the YMCA to create a new home for the Whatcom Family YMCA, if not at the board mill site, but somewhere on the waterfront? Working with an experienced and knowledgeable design and community team, the YMCA is showing leadership in building a community for all ages, income levels, and folks like me with various physical and cognitive abilities. The new YMCA has been designed, the proposed new YMCA has been designed as an architectural centerpiece for Bellingham that many people would come to see the building at a logical location for a facility for all to use. We hope that our port commissioners will think about what their families and friends will draw them to the waterfront year-round. Please vote to support the YMCA proposal, and if not, at the board mill, could the YMCA work collaboratively with you, the Port Commissioners, and the Port of Bellingham staff to somehow find a place on the waterfront to situate the YMCA, which is close to the center of Bellingham? Thank you very much for your time and your work on this issue.
Thank you very much, Wendy, for that comment. I'm going to try to read this. Is it Anna? Yes. Anna?
Hello.
From Bellingham.
From Bellingham. Thank you for this opportunity to provide input. My name's Anna Booker. I've been following the redevelopment of the former GP site since I moved here with my family in 2003. My interest is an outgrowth of my work as a history instructor at Whatcom Community College, where my students and I have been creating a digital map to document the changes to our working waterfront. I read with interest the 4 proposals, and I support the committee's recommendation for the Whatcom-based board mill group proposal. First and foremost, because the team is comprised of local architects, construction firms, and landscapers who are deeply invested in our community. They work here, they live here, they raise their kids here, and they are going to be accountable to what gets built. The proposal also highlights ways that this team is looking to design with environmental principles, including a greenhouse roof, rain gardens, and the expansion of indoor-outdoor gathering spaces. To date, our community, with the support of the port, has chosen again and again to repurpose this prime real estate in ways that maintain the historic integrity of our city's industrial past. Repurposing the granary building, using the acid ball as an art installation, choosing to keep the impressive digester tanks, to name a few. Let's leverage this unique opportunity to bring in Coast Salish voices and perspectives on waterfront redevelopment. Perhaps the board mill group can invite Lemmy carvers into the design process for the convention center. Perhaps the port can reach out to the Lemmy Indian Business Council to ask how they would like to have a presence on the waterfront. I don't assume to know the best path. However, I do believe that as we continue our transition to a post-industrial economy focused on sustainability, growth, and the preservation of our heritage fishing and maritime industries, we would be remiss to leave out the voice of the Coast Salish people, our neighbors, for whom the shoreline has always been the center of their way of life. Done.
You rehearsed. Thank you, Anna, for that very, very much. I see Sandy Ward. If you would like to speak, we'll unmute you.
Yes, thank you. I'm Sandy Ward with Bellingham Whatcom County Tourism, and I served on the Board Mill Building Proposal Review Committee. And as part of that committee, I spent many, many hours reading and reviewing literally hundreds of pages, and then scoring the various proposals for factors that related to schedule, architecture, sustainability, team composition, and financing plans. In the RFP, it clearly stated that historic preservation of the board mill building was a priority, as was having a hotel and conference center space. And since my expertise is related to hotels and conference centers, I, of course, had a high degree of interest in how each proposal responded to the criteria, how well each understood tourism's economic impact, and how well the teams had performed on other projects. The committee that participated in the proposal review and scoring was diverse in our backgrounds and both thorough and thoughtful during the process. It was noted that all the proposals had good elements, but some rose above others. And I feel the process and the conclusions we reached as a committee were fair and represented our best efforts. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity to participate in the process of shaping the future of the waterfront. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else wishing to speak, raise your hand or make yourself known just by speaking.
Looks like Guy Ochiogrosso.
Who?
Guy Ochiogrosso. You made me say that twice, didn't you?
Mr. Ochogrocio, please.
Exactly why Ken made you say that again. Completely why. My name is Guy Ochogrosso, President and CEO of the Bellingham Regional Chamber of Commerce. More importantly for this conversation, one of the selection review committee members. And I'm not going to add anything else. I think Sandy hit it on the head, articulated it perfectly. I think as a community, we have a tendency to analyze and overanalyze things. And I think the process was sound. I didn't love any one of the 4 proposals 100%. I didn't agree with everyone's thought among all of them. But at the end of the day, the top proposal was the top proposal that I graded. I reviewed it as the top one, as did the entire committee. One of the things that's important, I'm not going to move the camera because I won't get it back centered, but there's a poster on my wall in this office. I think it's dated for 1954 and 64. And one of my very past predecessors as head of the chamber is pointing to this sign that says, "Work for adequate port development." We've been working at this for 60 or 70 years. And I think that's an important context when looking about moving things forward, honoring the past, which is truly important, and activating the site as an economic driver for this community. And again, I think the board mill block presented by the board mill group, which was selected by the committee, does just that. So thank you for the time to speak and engage with you.
Thank you, Guy. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no one, I will say that we have another period open for public comment at the end of this meeting. It will be at 5:30 or at the close of the meeting, whichever comes sooner. So anyone wishing to speak later in the day, please let that be known. All right, we're going to move to the consent agenda without objection. Carrie?
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through L.
Any comments, Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I looked it over, everything looks good to me.
Commissioner Shepard?
I just had a comment on E, because I sit in on the EDA RLF committee that reviewed the application. This, like the last one we received, is another use it or lose it money opportunity. If we don't utilize this money, it won't be available. And if we do utilize it, once the loan is paid back, this will be additional money available to small business loans in our community. I also spent some time with the owners talking over their proposal and their expansion, and they are looking to go from about 10 employees to almost 40 with this expansion. They're taking a project on that has, it's square in the middle of Old Town. It's square in the middle of a lot of what's happening in the future of Bellingham. And I think they've got a good vision for activating that space and making it tie in with the water that it's so close to. But the previous owners didn't really, I think, activate that connection with the water and the surrounding area like these guys are going to. So I think they've got a good plan forward, and this money will certainly aid their ability to hire staff now and train them up. And as we all know, hiring staff is a challenge. So if they're able to do that early, get them invested in the project, it's going to make their long-term efforts and they're just that much more successful.
Thank you for that. No other comments? Okay, and my only comments is I just want to make the public aware that this is a consent agenda that includes a bunch of benefits to the community. We are going to assist Corvus Energy, and we will become the battery manufacturing mecca for America, I believe, because we're focused solely on, we've got so many opportunities in that arena. We are assisting in broadband throughout the county, especially the underserved areas. We are doing environmental remediations. All of this is part of this consent agenda. And to top it all off, you get to go have a beer in Old Town because of what the port is doing. And I just wanted to make sure that the community understood that this consent agenda is packed every week, and those are just a few of the items that I picked out for this time. Otherwise, I have nothing. We shall go to a vote.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through L.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is a yes. Now we're going to move to Brian Gowan and the presentation for the waterfront.
All right, I just want to make sure I get this right. So I think I stop share here, right, and then open up the other one. Okay, I'll make sure I'm doing this right through Zoom here. Okay. You got that up on Zoom? All right, thanks, Commissioners. Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental and Planning Services for the Port and Waterfront District Project Manager. So this is one of our kind of regular reoccurring Waterfront District updates. We do these kind of regularly just to keep the Commission and the community informed on what we've been working on. No action items associated with this, more of a conversation, so feel free to jump in with any questions you might have. If you might recall, the past few updates we've had were focused on some of the redevelopment opportunities, kind of where we were reconfiguring some of the layout for Harcourt, that kind of thing. Then we also did an update recently on some of the master planning work that we're doing, project-specific planning. And then based on just the work that we've been doing on community events and other things like that, this is the focus for this update, is really some of the events, the community-focused work that we're doing, interim uses, a lot of the exciting stuff that's starting to come forward this summer, and what we kind of see over the next year or so as well. So I'll walk through these, but I guess first I just wanted to highlight that, you know, all the projects I'll talk about tonight really is a huge port-wide team effort. I mean, we've got a really great group. Carrie is leading up this interim uses group for us, really herding the cats there to keep things moving down at the container village. Our maintenance crew has stepped up huge and done a lot of the work for the container village, and it's a fun, kind of different type of work. Our engineering team has been great. Our real estate folks having to work with the tenants. Rob and Mike are working with the mountain bike community, our events team. So really a port-wide effort here, and it's been really fun to be involved with. And so as you'll see as we walk through this, it's a pretty diverse set of things that have been coming together, but they're really a ton of fun for staff as well as then for the community. So a few of the things I'm just going to highlight here, you know, our waterfront bike park, the container village, our 4th of July celebration, the Northwest Tune-Up, a group, an arts collective called Paper Whale that has some great ideas coming. And then also highlighting a few of the other project partners like the city that have more formal public access pieces and where they're at on some of their parks development. So, and then just highlighting some of the other things that fall into this category. So the Waterfront Bike Park, as you know, we've talked about this a couple times, but it has changed and morphed over time. If you remember back when this first got developed as an idea, it was before there was anything else down there besides the roads. I mean, it was the first thing to go down there. There were no bathrooms, no containers, no beer that you could get, no food, no picnic benches, and we really just, with commission support and the budget and Rob's vision on the pump track, really got this thing going, and it was an instant success. It was a huge hit from the community, and it's really grown from there. And you saw then during COVID, when people couldn't exercise indoors and the kids couldn't have birthday parties with their friend's house, it became a place to go for lots of different reasons, and it became even more kind of used and beloved by the community. And we've just continued to kind of grow that with the installation of the restrooms, and then the container village, which I'll talk about, really kind of brings this all together for a variety of different people to enjoy being down there. We've added a skills area, which is was a kind of a volunteer-based construction of these up here in the upper right. You can kind of see these wooden planks and that are kind of low to the ground little areas that kids and adults and of all ages can ride on these to kind of get comfortable riding on different types of materials and rolling up and down on and kind of curving on these wood structures. We've added the jump lines, which has an advanced and an intermediate and a beginner jump lines. We had an area that was modified as part of the Northwest Tune-Up. It's turned into this drag race area, which is the upper left, where actually two racers can go side by side and run the same pump track route. And just they did competitions during the Tune-Up, which I'll talk about, but also just friends down there can race each other, and it's just another type of use for the bike park. So aside from that, we've also done some infrastructure components to that. We've noticed that it needed more consistent watering, so our maintenance crew installed an irrigation system that allows us to water that down, control dust, and we can be done by port staff or even volunteers. Mountain Bike Coalition is helping to train folks to educate them on how to do that and still preserve our infrastructure that we've invested in. And then added on top of that, not just these individual users, but it's now becoming recognized as an area that organizations want to have events and coordinate with. So WMBC has over 22 after-school bike skills sessions. They partner with the Vamos group, which is provides underprivileged children with an opportunity to have bikes that can go down there and use that facility. There's a new group that I had just learned of just recently called AERO, Adaptive and Inclusive Recreation of Washington, which brings developmentally and physically disabled folks a variety of different recreational opportunities, and this is one of the ones when they're focusing on. So just a really cool, wide-ranging accessibility for this bike park, which we never really envisioned when it first came together. So it's really fun to see. So that,
just a quick point.
Yeah.
This is still primarily on the area that was designated for park.
That's correct. It has expanded a fair amount, and so there is areas. The future park footprint kind of wraps around this area, so you can see that this kind of main part is really on future development area, but that's down the road. We don't have any current plans for it. We just know that that's an area that. And the beauty of dirt is it can be moved and be pushed over to someplace else and made into a new jump line or something like that.
So Rob.
Yes?
You had that look in your eye.
Well, it's getting bigger and bigger, and eventually it's going to exceed the footprint of the park. But generally, we're in the footprint of the park, and we'll try and stay in those lines. We don't all color in the lines, though, so.
It is the number one question I get from people when we're talking about the pump track is, what's the future of this facility? Yep. How do we best communicate to the public that this is in the footprint of the park? I don't generally have a better answer than the city doesn't yet have plans for their park. We've done a favor to the community by building this, and hopefully the city will see that this is a great asset and will want to keep this instead of mowing it over for a walking trail.
Yeah, I think, the standard answer that I like to give is that this is here, that's a larger phase down the road. There's no immediate development for there. So for the foreseeable future that we've got some room to play with this. The city team has expressed, and this is non-binding, of course, they have expressed the value of this and that they see this as something that would likely be at the minimum incorporated into a future park in some fashion, whether it's this exact footprint and this kind of scale, that's to be determined. But I would envision that this is a good chunk of this stays as a part of the future park. If future development changes that, the beauty of this, like I said, is that it can be moved, it can be relocated. There's lots of ways to it's not paved. We've already reconfigured it once. We can do that again.
And what's the time scale when we would think the city would take over ownership of this and have plans in place?
Well, I'd have to review back on our interlocal agreement with them on the facilities. Right now, and you'll see this in one of the future slides, right now, those interior parks really are not in the immediate future. They're really when the development along those occurs when they pull the trigger on the development of those parks, because that's an amenity for the adjacent development. So right now they're focusing on the Waypoint Park and the Waypoint Extension and the Shoreline Park, as well as a really large investment in the Cornwall Beach Park, which is going to be the significant waterfront park. So these interior parks really probably wouldn't be timed until after the development of those interior blocks. So,
Okay.
and we got plenty of time to continue to work with them on, on what this might look like.
And really, the concept early on was that we were filling space and bringing commerce and people to the waterfront that would not normally be there,
Right.
as it sat fallow, basically waiting for development to occur around it, or buildings, whatever happened.
Exactly.
And just anecdotally, I've never seen more people congregated in an area of Bellingham than you see every day or every weekend. And depending on the day, you get a different age group.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
I've noticed at the pump track. So it serves a tremendous number of people.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, thanks.
Brian, could you minimize the Zoom
Oh, yeah.
box
Oh,
there?
Yeah, thank you for that.
Not that I don't like seeing Guy Ochogracio.
There we go. All right. Another really exciting one that we started to see happen last year when Colshan Trackside opened up was the Portal Container Village. It's now been officially named as the Portal, and that currently has 5 full-time tenants there. That has Colshan, Silky Scoop, and Sunnyland Bikes, which were all around last year, and then now also have the Dish, Our Kitchen, which is part of the Dish Foundation, and now just opened up right before 4th of July, I believe, was the Rain or Shine Riviera Club, which is kind of a burger joint, as well as serving beer and wine, and they have a little beer garden there. And then we also have in our container arch there a rotating vendor for some local artists and creatives that want to sell their stuff without having a large brick and mortar store, and maybe they sell stuff online as well, but they can come and have a presence. There's actually kind of groups, they'll pull 3 or 4 artists together, and they'll be in this smaller container, this is a retail container, for a week at a time, and then they rotate through, and we've got a waiting list for that as well. It's been really, really successful. I popped in there a couple times to talk to folks, and they love it. They are so happy to be down there, and just a different group of people just that they might not have access to otherwise. And 2 rotating food truck spaces, and now we have multiple restrooms down there, a permanent restroom and 2 trailered restrooms, so serving that need. And then just recently installed a covered area, a large tent area with more seating and planter area. The covered area we think we could also rent as event space, so if people want to have birthday parties, or like they do, like the Squalicum Boathouse, that you could have events down there and you could rent out that space, but then have people come and go from the container village. You'll see in the future we have some plans here for phase 2 and beyond on that as well. So that's been really exciting and successful. Really big, huge kudos to our maintenance crew and engineering team for pulling that off, getting those folks open for the spring and summer season.
And then 2 quick points.
Yep.
First, Carrie, wonderful job on the plants. The planters look amazing. Yeah, the site is looking very professional, very nice. And then this is also designed that if somewhere down the road you can pick up the containers and move them to a different area as development occurs around it. But this is basically to put commerce on the waterfront where there was none.
Yep,
And
that's
I'm
exactly right.
Reiterating that. And then you have plans for more containers, and we have people that will be there in the following years. Right?
Yep.
Already in the queue.
That's right.
We're just waiting for the city of Bellingham and others to.
Yeah, and part of that is some of our next year's port budget as well. So we're working on that. You'll see that in the 2023 port budget, more uses like this and more expansion of phase 2.
Any feel for, can you tell us what kind of vendors those will be?
Rob, you
Well, probably mostly be retail, not so much food and beverage, just because of the complexities of doing food and beverage in a container. But I think we're going to try and pull off one more food and beverage vendor, and then the rest will be retail products. More artists, more specialty wares.
And we'll see. We'll start to each time we do that, we'll just see how successful it is. And if once things working better, then we can kind of make that transition to that. But yeah, the infrastructure installation for food and beverage is a little bit more onerous than the retail, because you just got to have electricity, and that's not a problem.
You just have to look at the HVAC equipment on top of the white container to tell you how complex it is to do food and beverage in a container.
Yeah.
So similar question, how long do we expect the portal to be around? Some of these, vendors are making considerable investments in being part of this area. I completely think we're buying down risk for future development by having this area. We're creating a hub where people come and want to be, and that's going to help every future development partner that we work with down there. But, I get the same question.
Yeah.
How long is this going to be around?
It's 10 years at a minimum. So we're going to bring you our leases for these 10-year periods. So far, I've just been doing them under my signature, which you authorized me to do up to 5 years. I think I've done 3 years with most of these, but as they've realized these investments, they want to make sure they can get their amortization of those investments. So we'll be coming back to you with leases for 10-year periods, usually a 5+5. We have the option of moving them after 5 should we decide we wanted to develop that site. But realistically, I don't see it moving for at least 10 years.
And the beauty of the reconfiguration of the Harcourt agreement is it wasn't intentional in there, but this is an area now that's fully under port control. So it wouldn't be like a developer comes to us and they have an option and say, we are now proposing on this site and we're obligated to move them. This is going to be a completely port internal decision of if we wanted to RFP this property or do something of that nature.
And another question, how complex would it be to make the entire portal a area where you could walk around with a alcoholic beverage?
It would require a change in legislation. We would love to do that, Commissioner, but unfortunately, liquor laws in the state of Washington right now require one person to be in charge of the property. And in the case of Colshan, they have a lease, so they're in charge of that footprint. But they cannot go in with another, like Colshan and Riviera Club could not go in on a beer garden together. It'd have to be one of them that's responsible for it.
Because currently we have 2 beer gardens that are with 20 feet apart, and so you can't walk in between the 2 with what you order.
Right.
And it makes complexities for both operators that, mostly for Riviera because Colshan's got more of a fence around it. But I've just watched people down there, you buy your drink and then all of a sudden you can't move with it, and it would seem to be a nice benefit if we could create a different arrangement where you could walk between the 2 beer gardens with your beverage.
So even for the Northwest Tuna, we're precluded by the laws from allowing that kind of activity to take place, and you had to keep your beer inside the beer garden where you bought the beer, and you couldn't take it elsewhere. So something we'd like to work on going forward. What our odds are successful in that or not, I don't know, but it would require a vote of the legislation to change our liquor laws.
Clearly, other states have more lax liquor laws than we do.
For sure.
Las Vegas has figured it out. New Orleans has figured it out. Lots of places that have fun written all over them have figured out how to let people walk around with a beverage, even in a, expansive area.
Yeah.
In Alaska, they just like you to take your glass you got your drink in back of the bar you got it. That's the only requirement.
Return your glassware.
Like New Orleans, you'll notice that all the bars have the same glassware, and that's for a reason, because it ends. I don't know how they figure out their inventories, but.
Well, it seems like something maybe we should engage with our local delegation on to just see what the possibilities are, what it would take, because we can't be the only ones who are scratching our head on this in the state.
I thought talking to local delegation is a good thing, but I thought we'd also engage the Hotel and Restaurant Association because and the events associations, because they're the ones that would really benefit from this change in the law. So they've got powerful lobbying groups, and they know how to work the legal end of that. So my next step was to be engaged then.
Okay.
We've got an abundance of beer, but not a whole lot of wine. Just
I noticed.
note to self. And then can you describe your 2 things? You can take the Silky Scoop anywhere you want. You can get the chocolate chip crunch and go anywhere. What are you going to do with the bullets? What's the plan long term? Do we have a long-term
The
or short-term?
digesters right now, actually, we're working on that right now with Harcourt's next project that they proposed, does retain them in place. We need to work with them on that and some of the details. We also need to work with the city on some of the structural elements of this to make sure that they're not really how they were designed to be. So we think they're safe and stable on that, but in order to have new development around them, we've got some work to do structurally, and we're underway with contracting on that right now. The intention would be to hopefully keep them all in place where they are and then design around them with a large plaza on the backside where the lawn is now, whether that stays a lawn or is like a community square, that kind of thing. That's the vision now. That could change, but I think for right now, everybody's agreeing that seems like the best plan, and we're starting to design around them.
At one point, we thought we might put them around in separate locations just to have demarcations and interest in other places.
Yeah, we talked about that too with the, kind of like they did with the acid ball, because that was moved from, it used to be right next to these guys. And that was moved. It was a lot of work to do that, and then it also does kind of break it up. I think there's been a lot of community input that this having these kind of where they are is really attractive to folks, because it's kind of the legacy of the use of the space, but they just are so dynamic right there together. And if you can build a public space around it, it really kind of highlights it. And there's some ideas on how you could do that with ramps and other things that go between them, around them. There's some examples, some precedents for that that some of the architects group that we're working with has pulled together. So,
any idea about what you might do to paint them, or can we have a name that cylinder contest, or
we haven't gotten that far.
Could have a family of cylinders?
Yeah.
That's a whole debate in itself as to whether you paint them or you leave them raw or you wrap them or what you do there. So we'll be having more conversations with you in the future on that.
All right, so just a few more slides here. The Northwest Tune-Up, obviously, we've talked a little bit about this. First-time new signature event for Bellingham and Whatcom County. Huge success, and we've debriefed the commission just on that a little bit, especially for a first-time event coming out of COVID, competing with a number of other festivals that were trying to, again, like just grab the momentum of people wanting to go and get out. It was 3 days of events, both at the Waterfront as well as Galbraith. They had bike demos, clinics, classes. There were races, both at Galbraith as well as down at the pump track, like I mentioned. They had a jump jam on the jump line. A bunch of vendors came from out of town to kind of show their equipment. There were demos, like I said. There were 24 live bands, both local and regional, national, on a small stage as well as the big stage. So that was really cool to see. 24 local breweries. So it was the Beer, Bike, and Music Festival, and big success. I mean, everybody was really happy with how it turned out. Great weather for it, and yeah, so looking forward to see how they build on it. I likely will have some kind of debrief from the organizers, maybe to have a special session with the commission, just to come and talk more from their perspective on how they see this moving forward over the next couple of years. So again, this one was funded by partially through that the tourism grant that Sea Feast was done for a few years, and this will be the same model. So first few years they get funding, and then they just kind of get them established and get them built on there, and then they stand on their own for future events. So they've got a few more years of that grant program. And so, yeah, a lot of fun.
And those bikers came from all over. They were not just local.
Yeah, no, they were international bikers and racers from all over. And there were, prize money, all that. It was a full-on real bike race with competitors from all over the
They
place.
stayed in our hotels and ate at our restaurants and shopped in our
I
stores.
saw so many cars driving around with multiple bikes on. A lot of cars going the wrong way down the one-way street, which means there was definitely people from out of town here. Yeah. Okay, so this is another one. This is a little bit of a shift. So those have been like really outdoor active stuff. What we've been working with for a couple years to get this off the ground was this, the Paper Whale Community Art Initiative, which is a local group of artists, folks that are involved in the community and in the art community that really wanted to have another way to bring interesting stuff to the waterfront that's not just bikes or beer, so, but also inspired by local folks that have a lot of creative instincts and abilities. So it's a series of speakers that are once a month. There's another one. There's one tomorrow night, and they bring in international speakers to talk about their particular art form, how they do this in community spaces, and then ultimately at the end of the year they'll have culminated a series of ideas that they'll have curated to bring to the port to say, hey, here's some ideas of what you could do for more community art down in the waterfront. And it could be everything from a storytelling storytelling series to large murals to temporary public displays, sculptures, that kind of thing. So really interested to see what comes out of that. One of the first things with that group was actually in conjunction with the tune-up was the honoring the Salish Sea Artwork that was installed on the board mill, shown on the lower left there, and really has been super cool to see. It's beautiful. Local artists from Lummi Nation and other Ymca, I think Jason Leclerc, Eagle Borzy, and Raven Borzy, and then local artist Gretchen Leggett, who has done a bunch of murals around town. And they're all part of that paper whale team, bringing ideas to the table on how to do more community installations like that. So really looking forward to seeing what comes out of that, because first example so far has just been, fantastic. So more to come on that one. That's another one that then we'll hopefully get into our budget for the next year to do some of maybe one of these a year or something like that to do a port or a waterfront installation. Another example here, actually, though, is that the maintenance crew installed these. The port maintenance crew worked on the installation of those, so a great way to have cost-effective things, as well as just cool stuff that the maintenance crew can be involved in. 4th of July was another big one. Last year we moved the 4th of July from Zwanich Point now down to the waterfront, which does a couple things. I think it continues to activate the downtown waterfront, as well as there's a little pressure relief valve for Zwanich, so people can still go there and watch the fireworks, but it spreads that out a little bit. Still both have great views of the fireworks. This is a day-long event sponsored by the Port, the Chamber of Commerce, and Kolshin Brewery. Bunch of family activities, live music, and food trucks, and all around a really good success down there as well. I think it'll just continue to get more and more people down to the waterfront in future years. And then the last one here, I think, is this, just highlighting again what the city team's working on. I've talked about this a little bit already. One of the first public access points in the waterfront was the Waypoint Park and the beach, which was a co-funded project by Port and City, was the beach. And that's been a big success, seeing people down there going to the water, launching kayaks. And now with that project established, they're in permitting right now for the second phase and extension of that, which will come in right behind the waterfront residential project that's under construction right now. So the upper left here kind of shows the acid ball is here. This is going to be a much more of a trail system, just a narrow trail system that goes along the water, and then comes out to the start of a future second park node over here, with plans then to continue to expand that along the waterway in the future. So that's under permitting right now, and they'll be under construction as soon as the waterfront residential projects complete, and then that area is freed up to allow them to then build the park extension. That's really just a quick summary. A lot of other things that I didn't talk about, but there have been continuing uses. Walk and Pride had their parade down there. Bike to Work and May Day parade was down there. The St. Patty's Day parade started down there. The farmers market's been going. So a bunch of things that have been utilizing this space that are community focused. We are looking at, we already talked about this, the Portal Phase 2, some pump track expansion, and then the community, the Cornwall Beach Park is also kind of a big focus for the city. We've got 2 more events that somebody reminded me today. We have the All In for Climate Action is going to have an event down there in conjunction with the Port and City and others, the start of the Climate Action Week. And then Kolshin is also, again, at the end of the summer, going to have a big end of the summer celebration to kind of close out the summer season down there. So a lot of people down there all the time. So that's the summary. Any questions, be happy to entertain. And just again, big thanks to the entire team on this one.
Mr. Shepard, do you have anything?
Could you back up a slide? When are we going to get some more details on that potential future access box that you've got labeled around the GP Pier?
Yeah, the GP Wharf is one that is on our to-do list to get some decisions with the commission on kind of how we want to advance that one. That area is highlighted. This is from a city slide, so they wanted to highlight that's an area that they've been working with the port on as a potential spot for the public access. It's kind of the most stable. The condition of the wharf is questionable in other areas as you get further down. It requires a little bit of work, and we do have some budget to do some safety improvements that could expand public access in that area relatively quickly. It would probably be temporary until we decide the long-term kind of approach for the GP Wharf, which is coupled with the Walk and Waterway cleanup, other public access elements, moorage that's being used for now in the marine trades area. So there's a lot of moving parts that all need to come together at the same time. But that box is highlighted as somewhere that the park is designed around that they could pretty easily just put maybe a little pathway that goes down to that area, and we'd have an overwater overlook kind of thing. We have some work to do to design on that, but we envisioned it more just make it safe. People could probably get out there still, maybe with a railing, and then we'll see about the long-term plans.
The interest is going to be high.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful spot. It's going to be really unique for getting the public out there, even if it's just for access and nothing more. I think it's also got a lot of potential for relocating our our fish sales, or having some dockside market, or some other direct fish sales that has been super popular, but is sometimes tucked away in Squalicum Harbor, whereas would be a lot more visible and accessible to the community here.
And that's something that we've thought about in the long term too, planning for, because that wharf is made for big ships coming up against it. Even like at the high tide, it's not, a boat doesn't really get up there unless you're really pretty big. So the long-term plan would be to modify that or put something new in that could accommodate those types of uses that much more accessible. But even in the temporary way, to get people out there with chairs, just enjoying the overwater experience. And it's a pretty big space.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next question, what is the access pathway going to be between the future city park, the Cornwall Beach Park, if that's what we're calling it?
Yep. Right now, that's what they're calling it.
And the downtown waterfront. How are people going to get back and forth between the two? Are they going to, that Cornwall?
It'll be Cornwall. We're actually, I don't know if I'm disclosing something I shouldn't, but we're in talks with the city to turn some of Cornwall into more of the bike lanes. The cycle track that we have on Granary and Laurel would extend all the way down to that, and so that'd give people a chance to bike or walk down there. But the access will be on Cornwall because of the shipping terminals in between, and with the heavy equipment and the rocks and everything going on the shipping terminal, we can't really have a path going through there.
We do anticipate in the long-term future, if the railroad ever relocated, that would be a potential walking trail that could connect that alignment. You could connect then down to if the railroad came back to the bluff. So we show that in the sub-area plan as a future connection, but that more depends on the railroad relocation happening, so that could be the alignment of a future trail, which is pretty common, rails to trails approach. So, and it makes that connection without then conflicting with the heavy uses in the shipping terminal.
Okay. Commissioner Briscoe, do you have any comments? Wake up.
No, I think it's a very good presentation. I think we got a lot of great stuff going on down there. I think it's even exceeded our executive director's thoughts of what was going to happen down there, and I think it's great. Everything that's going on is great. Like I've always said, I'd like to see things happen faster. I'd like to see the development happen faster, but it's going in the right direction, and people have the opportunity to be on the waterfront down there. It's all great stuff. Nothing other than that.
And I'm just going to, my 2 cents is we could have easily just followed the plan that was put in front of us and this would have looked like a desert for the next 10 years. But kudos to a staff, kudos to Rob, kudos to, when I say staff, a staff that was receptive to thinking outside the box. It wasn't just here's a plan, we're going to be bureaucratic in our implementation of it. We got to have this building here now and this. It was really a collaborative effort by a lot of creative people that had some vision to make something happen. And I think all of that is a testimony to how creative and how flexible and how well this port works, and the creativity on the port. So just a shout out to all of you and the staffing too. I mean, when somebody comes up to you and says, I want to put a bike track, and oh, how about a container village? And you don't just go, no, I'm an engineer. We build buildings. It was a tremendous response from this port staff, and kudos to you, Rob. And then the last thing is, it really does feel safe I know that in recent days we've had a couple of incidents down there, but I will tell you that the area feels safe for families. So it's a great place for Bellingham to be.
So, and we have that safety in mind. We're going to add lighting and continue to make it safer and better. So be patient with us on that. It does take a team, as Brian said. I mean, this has been an incredible effort by port staff. WMBC, Whatcom Mountain Bike Coalition, has been a huge help in this. And then the commission themselves has given us the leeway to do this kind of stuff. So it's been a community effort to get it done, and I think it's been really well received. And I'm really happy to hear that everyone's biggest concern is that it may go away someday because it's so popular, because that tells you it's probably not going to go away someday. So I think it's something the whole community should be proud of. I'm proud of it.
All right, thanks, Commissioners.
You done? Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, mind if I move on? We'll move on to our action items, and these are things that we actually vote on. Action item number 1. Carrie.
Sure. Motion authorizing the executive director to execute an environmental agreement with Mercy Housing Northwest. Sorry, I lost my spot. And A, execute an environmental agreement with Mercy, oh, I just read that. B, enter into a consent decree amendment with the Washington State Department of Ecology to perform cleanup actions at the lignin operable unit within the Georgia Pacific West site pending no substantive changes to the public review consent decree amendment.
Thanks, Carrie. That was a mouthful. Yeah. So good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ben Howard, Environmental Project Manager. This is actually a project, kind of an extension of Brian's presentation, another project on the waterfront. So as Carrie just stated, today I'm presenting the action item to enter into a consent decree amendment for the lignin operable unit to perform a cleanup action and execute an environmental agreement with Mercy Housing Northwest. So the site is located within Bellingham Bay waterfront at the corner of Cornwall Avenue and Laurel Street. And here's a recent photo of the site. This area in Bellingham Bay was historically tide flats prior to dredging and filling in the early 1900s. Georgia Pacific operated the lignin warehouse and above ground storage tanks for use in storing lignin waste and lignin products. Both the former warehouse and the above ground tanks have been demolished, and the warehouse and tank foundations are still present, and they'll be removed as part of the cleanup action. This slide illustrates the Georgia Pacific West cleanup site. There's a greater Georgia Pacific West cleanup site, and as shown, that site includes 2 different areas, and they're referred to as remedial action units, or RAUs. There's the pulp and tissue mill RAU and the chlor-alkali RAU. The lignin operable unit is part of the chlor-alkali RAU. So there is an existing Georgia Pacific West site consent decree for the pulp and tissue mill RAU, where cleanup was conducted in 2016. That's where a lot of the activities that Brian had just talked about, the capping project down at the waterfront. The lignin operable unit cleanup will be incorporated into the existing consent decree with this amendment, and includes a separate cleanup action plan, which is an ecology deliverable for this parcel. The consent decree amendment and the cleanup action plan were published for public comment on from June 20th through July 19th. And the consent decree amendment will be signed by the Port and Ecology and entered into the Whatcom County Superior Court and settles liability following cleanup implementation. So the cleanup action consists of removal and disposal of structures and contaminated soil. Approximately 15,000 tons of contaminated soil will be removed. And then site grading and restoration to prepare for the future development project, future groundwater monitoring, and site controls to protect the integrity of the cleanup. An environmental agreement has been developed between the Port and Mercy Housing Northwest. The agreement is a requirement of the option agreement and defines the cleanup project roles, financial obligations, and responsibilities. And the Port is taking the lead in the cleanup action. So pending authorization from the Commission, the immediate next step is to execute and file the consent decree amendment with Ecology. to get the cleanup going. Due to the timing of the project, project bid advertisement has already been completed, and that was done in July. We received 7 responsive bids, and the lowest responsive bid was below the engineer's estimate. And we are ready to execute a contract and ready to proceed with the project. The cleanup construction work will be initiated this month, and it's expected to extend into November. And the following cleanup construction, the project will transition to Mercy Housing for the affordable housing project. And the port will continue to monitor groundwater, just as part of the greater GP West cleanup site. So that's all I had for today. Thanks. If you have any questions.
You want to go first? Mr. Shepard?
I just wanted to both thank staff for all their work on this. I know we've been working under some tight timelines, tighter than is even comfortable for us who are used to working under pressure. And staff has really been working hard to coordinate with all the parties, both on the cleanup side and the development side, to make sure that this is ready to go. And also to just give a shout out to Ecology for having some vision for a program like this. We're one of the first ports in the state to really partner with Ecology to look at brownfield sites that need cleanup or have to get cleanup done eventually, but can be used for affordable housing. And Department of Ecology is bringing 100% cleanup dollars to this project. Normally we get 50% cleanup dollars, but they're bringing 100% dollars here because of the affordable housing component. And I think it's a really nice partnership. I hope to see more of these with Department of Ecology. I hope Department of Ecology does more of these throughout the state. We have a critical need in our community for housing that meets a variety of income levels, and to make this an inclusive community. And one thing I've heard over and over about the waterfront is we want the waterfront to be an inclusive community that isn't restricted to just one income level. We don't want it all to be luxury condos and jewelry boutique shops. So this project allows us to move forward a initiative with affordable housing, with ground floor childcare, that is really going to expand the utility and reach of this site. So thanks for all your work.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I will just reiterate, Ecology's been a great partner, especially on the timeline that you'd mentioned at the beginning. Yeah, they really stepped up to help expedite this project.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Commissioner Shepard said there. I think a great show of what government entities can get done when we work at it. And then thanks for explaining before you gave us the acronyms. That was great. That way it makes it a little easier to understand what you're talking about. It was great. I like that. Other than that, I have nothing. Thank you.
Yeah, my only comment is just a few short months ago, we were at odds with Harcourt, and now we're seeing activity in all places of this waterfront and a boom. And nobody does cleanup better than the Port of Bellingham. I think from what I've seen, we're the right people to be doing the cleanup, and Brian, you're the right group to be heading it up, so thank you for that. And we will have taken one of the most contaminated places in the county and turned it into something very functional. A lot of brownfield development, a lot of work will be happening here. So very thrilled to see this going, and I think we've got the best people on it. Carrie?
Motion authorizing the executive director to execute an environmental agreement with Mercy Housing Northwest and enter into a consent decree amendment with the Washington State Department of Ecology to perform cleanup actions at the lignin operable unit within the Georgia Pacific West site, pending no substantive changes to the public review consent decree amendment.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Shepard?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is a yes with it, and I just wanted to point out that that 100% match on the brownfield development is substantial dollars that we're saving the community of Whatcom County and the city of Bellingham. Thank you. All right, with that, I think we'll adjourn the meeting.
There's one more action item.
Oh, there is?
Wow.
Yeah.
Just making sure people are awake.
Action item 2, a motion authorizing the port to enter into an exclusive negotiation agreement between Board Mill Group LLC and the Port of Bellingham for a 3.42 acre parcel in the Waterfront District.
Elliot, I think you've got this one.
I may need some technical help here. Thank you for your patience. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Elliot Smith. I'm the Director of Real Estate here at the Port of Bellingham. I just want to set the scene briefly for your decision-making process on this item. Back in January of this year, we put together a request for proposals to find yet another way to work in the waterfront district to activate that space and see that it becomes a great place to be in the future for everyone. We put together this RFP. It had 5 key criteria to it. Those criteria were laid out quite plainly in a matrix, and even had the percentage of ranking, how they would be scored in the future. We ranked them together with port staff, as well as staff. You've heard from several of them earlier today in the public comment period, from the Chamber of Commerce, from the Tourism Bureau, and from the city, as well as our port staff. Those ranking criteria covered schedule, architectural design, sustainability, the composition of the team, and financial packages. The idea being that these would be proposals that could be completed in a relatively quick period as far as construction goes, and that the teams were capable financially and technically of delivering those proposals in a timely basis to the benefit of the community. Following the long period of review of the 4 proposals that we got, the Board Mill Group's proposal for the former Board Mill building, which encompassed the historic, saving the historic structure of the Board Mill building, adding hotel space, indoor meeting space, some outdoor meeting space, some residential units, some restaurant space, and public spaces out facing the water and the parks and trails that my colleague Brian highlighted a little bit earlier. We were impressed by those. The objective ranking showed this proposal to be the best ranked out of 4 very creative proposals. So we did get 4 very good proposals in. We have to pick one at some point, though. So this is the proposal with the Board Mill Group that we would like to now move forward with for a next phase of negotiation to finalize the design, make sure all the financial aspects are in place, continue to work with the community to make sure that everything fits the Port of Bellingham well. And so today here to recommend that we move forward with an exclusive negotiating agreement. We carry this forward, and then we come back later in the year, probably in December or early January, to the commission in an open public meeting to come with a final proposal on a contractual basis. Should this not move forward, we will go back to the other proposals that we received this spring. I'd also like to quickly thank the groups that put in the other proposals. They really did have very good, clear ideas. They worked quite hard on them, and yeah, that is greatly appreciated. I'd also like to thank the reviewers, both inside of the port and outside of the port. A lot of hours reading through a lot of very interesting material, and then trying to juggle what makes the most sense for the port and the community of Bellingham. Yeah, and lastly, the board mill group is here today. The commissioners could invite them to introduce themselves later if they wish, but I think it's more appropriate you continue to consider this measure and see where we go from there. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Briscoe?
No.
Commissioner Shepard? I thought I was going to buy you some time.
Well, I wanted to first thank staff and the other commissioners again for working on the previous item that we addressed and making sure that we're developing mixed use and mixed income affordability at the waterfront. I think it's really important for us to be pushing these simultaneously forward. So I did want to thank both of the other commissioners that I get to work with and our staff for bringing up two projects to us today that address multiple needs and opportunities at the waterfront. I think, you know, I don't normally get this many emails about anything that we have on our agenda, but I've gotten a lot on this topic. And it reiterates the importance that the community has about the waterfront. It's a hot button issue and people feel strongly about it. And there's a lot of interest and hopes and desires and vision for what's going to go on down there. And I do want to thank all the groups who put forward proposals because I think they all have some excellent ideas and there's merits to each of them. Certainly the one that I've gotten the most emails about and had the most conversations is the proposal to relocate the YMCA. I did a quick tally and out of my 40 or so emails in the past couple weeks, 30 of them, over 30 have been for that proposal. Only 2 for the soccer stadium, which maybe if we had a soccer team it might be different here, but we don't. And then only a handful for a hotel and conference center. And so we continue to have a very strong community interest in additional public development at the waterfront. And so for me, it's my biggest question going forward is how can we align a process to put more dedicated thinking into some permanent public development down at the waterfront. We've done a great job with some of our interim uses, but there continues to be a lot of interest in some year-round public benefit down there in terms of development. So that's one question I have going forward. I also have some questions about the scaling and size of the conference center. And in both some emails and discussion that Commissioner Bell has started, and also my own conversations with Western, part of the ease of my selling the idea of a hotel and conference center to the community has been that we could host professional events and drive revenue into our economy, have Western host professional conferences and events. but I'm not certain that the scaling of the conference center that we have planned here will actually accomplish that. So I need to learn more, and we need to have a longer discussion about that scaling of size before I feel that I can accurately portray what it's going to facilitate in the future. So those are a couple questions that I have that maybe we'll have a conversation between us, and if staff has any feedback that they can share with us there.
I would just say, Commissioner, that some of that stuff will be determined during this exclusive negotiating agreement as we determine the exact room count and square footages and all of that will be determined between staff and the board mill group during this negotiating agreement. We're not coming to you asking for a purchase and sale today. We're coming to you asking for a period of time to discuss those details with what we consider the front runner proposal.
Yeah. And I guess for me, the two things I would like to see is, one, for us to make sure we get a really good understanding about that scaling for the conference center, because we have other facilities that meet the need for weddings. And weddings are great, but there's facilities in, striking distance of here. And those aren't necessarily the events that drive, 200 people to fly into our airport and allow a professional conference to occur where we can really see that benefit of activity for downtown, for our restaurants and other ancillary benefits that would come with it. So it continues to leave me scratching my head if we're going to be able to achieve that with the conference center that we have planned right now in the board mill proposal. And then I think to move forward with this idea of a public benefit development, I would like us to really put forward a working group with the Downtown Business Partnership that is going to provide a recommendation on a development opportunity that is a public benefit. Might be the alcohol building, it might be some of the Western Crossing space, but I think we have a couple options there. I don't know if it will be the YMCA that is the ultimate group that is down there. I kind of think that they're better suited for Civic Field personally, but I think regardless if it's the YMCA or not, I would like to see us have a dedicated group that is addressing this clear interest that's been articulated by the community.
One more time to go back to you, Commissioner Briscoe. Anything before I kick it off?
Well, yeah, I was going to wait till right before we voted, but a lot of merit to what Michael says there. There is a need for YMCA. I mean, I learned to swim there when I was a kid. It's not very big. The place needs to be somewhere, and it needs to be a lot bigger. As commissioners, at least this commissioner, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners feel the same way, we'd like to look 25 to 50 years down the road when we're doing projects or we're trying to figure out things for economic development, the longevity of things we build. Will they be able to accommodate, what's going to happen in 50 years down the road? 50 years ago, I was 16 years old, and if you'd told me when I was 16 what Bellingham was going to look like today, I told you were nuts. Things happen and are happening a lot faster than we anticipate. Like I say, trying to look 50 years down the road is hard. 25 years is even hard. But I'm in agreement. We need a bigger YMCA. I was under the understanding and heard that Civic Field area was being discussed with the city of Bellingham, and it looked promising before the pandemic. So I'm not sure what happened to all that. I'm in agreement with Commissioner Shepard on the fact that I think we need to make sure that the convention center is big enough to handle large-scale things. I mean, we don't need little-scale things. I think we're going to need larger scale things. I think the future is going to require larger scale things. It's said to me that we have plenty of hotels in Bellingham, and we may have plenty of hotels now. 20 years down the road, will we have plenty of hotels? I think not. So when the decisions are made by the commission on projects like this, we're trying to look way, way down the road, not 5 years, not 3 years, not 10 years. We're trying to look down the road to make sure that what this port commission does and this port staff does is the right thing for the future, and it's the right thing to do for the economy of Whatcom County. I know I've received a ton of emails myself about this particular project, and I'm sympathetic to the people for the YMCA. I get it, but personally, I don't believe that is the right spot or the right building. So I would like to hope that, along with Michael, we can direct staff and our executive director to work with these groups to see if we can find another spot on the waterfront, if that's where the YMCA needs to be, that particular project, or if we can prompt the city to get back into negotiations for those folks to get something figured out in Civic Field. Whatever the case may be, I'd like to see the port facilitate that, port staff facilitate that, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I'm going to take us back to, once again, the Harcourt renegotiation a couple of months ago. And here we are in August. And already we're looking to negotiate an agreement. That's rarely accomplished in government. So again, thank you to the port staff and to you, Rob, and the crew that you run. Made this an efficient process and made it a good one. I will say that as commissioners, if I say anything, just hit me. We have spent a great deal of time reviewing every proposal that came in. We came in and sat down with all of them. We read them all. We took assessment of them all. We asked questions. We availed ourselves of staff. We waited for the committee. And by the way, I'm going to ask you if you wouldn't mind telling the community who were the people that were on that committee so they can see what a broad group that was. Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, I do have that in front of me. These are people that represented their organization. You're going to make me pronounce this name again, aren't you? Guy Ochiogrosso, as my best attempt at that from the...
What's his name from the chamber?
Yeah.
You did a much better job than Ken did, for the record.
Thank you. I've been practicing. Tara Sindeen from the city of Bellingham, Sandy Ward from Whatcom Tourism, who you heard from a little bit earlier today, Mike Hogan from the Port of Bellingham, Brian Gowran from the Port of Bellingham, and I might point out he has set over the years as a staff member the framework that this whole project is being developed in. Wouldn't happen without that. Wouldn't happen without the cleanup. It's, yeah, this is building on the work that's happened with the commission over the past 10, 12 years. I don't want to say how many years. And Noah Carlson from the real estate staff and myself were the 7 members of the reviewing body. And again, working from as an objective scoring criteria as we could muster last January, and stuck to that through the scoring process. But thank you to all of those folks. It's a lot of work.
Thank you. And again, it was just a process that we went through to make sure that we understood what all of the proposals were. We all took our time to make sure that we understood them all intimately. We had conversations with each of the proposers as they submitted, with the exception of one for me. Spoke with all of them to get a feel for what their vision was and what their proposal was. It was our intent early on to make sure that the RFP was broad enough that we would attract ideas that were outside of the box. That was the original intent, and we certainly got a couple that were outside of the box. All of them ideas that I think have merit and have given us some ideas for what we can do further on the port. But I personally, after reviewing everything that I saw, found this proposal to be the one that was far and away better for the port long-term in our vision. And I say that knowing that we spent millions of dollars cleaning up this site with the intent that we would sell the site back and create revenue on this site. The sole purpose for redevelopment of this waterfront is to recoup the cost that the citizens of Whatcom County paid in taxes to clean up this operation and to put it back on the tax rolls. It was on the tax rolls as GP. Our intent is to put it back on the tax rolls in an expeditious and efficient manner and keeping Bellingham in mind. And I believe that this proposal has done that after a thorough review of all of them and after conversations with many people. So I'm thrilled that we're at this stage. I'm thrilled with the staff's review. I will ask if there's anybody from the group that would like to say something or would like to introduce yourselves. We would entertain somebody standing up and saying, "Hey, these are my buddies." It was no doubt in my mind.
Mike, can you go to the
Mike,
microphone?
and introduce the group, please.
The Board Mill Group, right behind me, Ben Faber, Raymond Faber, Ellie Samuel, Sean Hegsted. The Fabers actually represent in the Board Mill group Faber Board Mill Investments, and that's who we are. Thank you.
And my final comment is that we did work very hard at making sure that we kept local flavor in this RFP process and well represented. We know Whatcom County is well represented here, and that you will do that. And then before I go to a vote, I did promise Wendy one more shot at the mic for 3 minutes.
3 minutes. So thanks a lot. It's really great that I heard all the comments and I learned a lot. And I echo Michael Shepard's comments that a public use on port property is important to include at the beginning of the process, and not, I mean, the economic development is very important for our whole community, but having on your committee, the Chamber of Commerce and all the people that are for economic development, nobody in the public sector we have a huge nonprofit sector, and we're kind of in between business and public. And so I think in the future, what I'd like to see the port include is when you're doing development to reach out to the community members that you think might be interested in participating in the get-go of the process and put them on a committee, maybe citizens on the committee or a nonprofit, community foundation, the YMCA, whatever. But I think if we want to indeed include the whole community in the port's property, that we need to include them at the get-go. So, I hope in the future, if the YMCA seriously wants to be considered, that that the port commissioners assign the task to Rob to have one of his staff members reach out and see if there's another place on the waterfront for the YMCA, because I think that would be a win-win situation. So that's my last word.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. Oh, you may.
On behalf of the group too, don't mind. Yeah, I'm Ellie Samuel. I want to make sure everybody understands that we all live here. We're all local. We care about this place tremendously, is clear from everybody in this room, your staff and the commissioners. We have reverence for this site. We understand that this part of this entire site is going to help really put Bellingham on the map, and we care deeply about how it gets developed, and will proceed with diligence in doing that in a way that we hope will make, almost everybody in the community feel good about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Is the group done? All right, my last thing is more of the same, and I think I did start this off. There really is, and you guys are privy to negotiations that you would normally find behind closed doors, but we have to do it in public, so get ready for this. So, Elliot, the most common thing that I hear is that really the conference room is something that we've got already, of that nature, that size, and quite frankly, the smaller boutique hotel does not lend itself to a realtors conference. So one of the most compelling emails I got was from the Realtors Association, who's saying if we wanted to have a nationwide realtors conference in Bellingham, we would have no place to take it. That really is something that we need to accommodate. I mean, I think the number of people looking at it just strictly from a port perspective, our job is to keep the airport full, the ferry running, right, to keep the transportation and the people coming in, and to keep the waterfront active. And it's very hard for me to understand how a nationwide conference would find its way here, or a seminar from Western that would, occupy numerous rooms. So we've all been to WPPA conventions where you've got numerous sessions going in different places. We don't have a place like that in Bellingham, and we certainly don't have a meeting room or a conference center that accommodates that. So one of the things that I'm asking for, and again, you guys get to hear this too, is that we've got a huge need for that in this community. And if I'm looking at it from a business development standpoint for the county as a whole, it's a glaring empty spot for us. And maybe that spot isn't here, but I need to know that at some point. But we have an obligation to fill it because there are people asking for it. There are people who want to do nationwide conferences here, which are highly profitable, just for the record, for anybody building something like this. So that really is my biggest comment is, other than that, I thought the design was gorgeous. I thought that the planning was perfect, and I love the people who are involved. They've been overly accommodating. Quite frankly, they've been great to work with as far as with you and the staff as the reports have come back. So, yeah, my only comment is nationwide conference.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up. I had a conversation with the conference director at Western just to ask them about the size, and they reiterated something similar. They're looking for at least 300 people in a ballroom with 5 to 6 breakout rooms for concurrent sessions that each hold 15 to 30 people. And right now, as planned, they could maybe have their plenary session down at the conference center that's being planned for the board mill, but have to facilitate everything else back at Western, which is just a scheduling nightmare, and they wouldn't do it. They would also be looking for a little bit larger hotel size as well with the number of rooms. They said optimal for them is somewhere closer to 150 rooms. So it's, again, a little bit larger on both scales. And I think for me, we either need to feel like the conference center is going to facilitate the needs we have in the market and in the community, or if it feels too half-baked, then maybe it's not the right site. And I think that's the conversation I want to have going forward, because I don't want to put something forward that's an almost there. So that's something I think we could have as part of that conversation over the next couple months to make sure that we feel comfortable with where this is going.
Yep.
And we just enlarged the ballroom over at the Bellwether to accommodate some of the larger fundraising events that occur here in town. So you can't have a hospice fundraiser and not be space constrained for the number of tables and the number of people who go to that auction. So we're constrained as a city in the size of the venues that we have. And I don't know if this site is conducive to that given the constraints of the site, but that's the overriding concern from my standpoint.
Now, if I might just make a word about
Commissioner Bell, Commissioner Bell, did I hear Michael say go big or go home? Is that what he said?
More or less. Good summary.
Thank you. Just a word about process. All 4 of the proposals we received were concept proposals. They laid out as best they could based on our decision-making matrix, what we were asking for as a board. And they balanced that with the building and the site that they had to work with, all 4 proposals. The idea at this point with the exclusive negotiating agreement is that this now goes from a concept design to a more detailed design. And the kind of things you are asking about tweaking room size, conference size, public access venues, et cetera, those are the kind of things that get developed as you move to a detailed design and then move to contract that. So I think the coming months will allow those issues to be addressed, to feed back to you as commissioners, and in a public forum, again, to look at what comes out after that detailed work has been done.
Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Briscoe, anything else?
No, I didn't have anything else.
Where's the helipad?
I thought it was at your place.
All right, with that,
Right beside the private jet landing strip.
Carrie?
Sure. A motion authorizing the port to enter into an exclusive negotiation agreement between the Board Mill LLC and the Port of Bellingham for a 3.42 acre parcel in the Waterfront District.
Commissioner Shepherd?
I'm a yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
I'd like to make sure that we address the YMCA, help those folks somehow. And my vote is yes.
Yeah, I can address that right now. We were talking to the YMCA pre-COVID and pre their discussions with the city for the civic site. We've talked to them about sites down there in the past, and I'm certainly going to reach back out to them and engage with our team with them to see if there's a location down there that's suitable for their needs.
Thank you, Rob.
I'm a yes as well. And with that, meeting adjourned. Oh, Bobby, you're going to yell at me. Is there any other business, Commissioner Briscoe? I can't adjourn the meeting. The meeting is back open. Any other business?
Do we have to have a public comment here before that?
We do have another public comment listed for the end of the meeting, so that could go now or it could go after other business. It's your choice.
Who's running this show?
Well, I was just reading the agenda.
Let's do the public comment now. Public comment? Any other public comment? Anybody wishing to speak online, just raise your hand. Other business, Commissioner Shepherd?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. One, I wanted to just check in with our conversations with the city about Cornwall and parking. I noticed it's kind of ramped up again. It had died down in the number of RVs that were parked there, and we seem to have gotten a resurgence in the number, and I wanted to see if we've addressed that with the mayor and his team.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that. Yes, sir. It's actually gone down in the last couple of days. I talked to the mayor last week. They're making an effort to move some of those along. We talked earlier about the cycle track possibly being installed there, which would eliminate parking on one side of that street. So yeah, there's a number of things at play there to try and address that concern.
Okay. Another one is I would like us. I know Gina's not here, and I was going to have her give us a little update on broadband, and hopefully we can do that in September. But I would like Rob to ask the county executive and his team about the ARPA funding for use in broadband. It's my understanding that most other counties have already started putting their ARPA funds. This is the I don't know what ARPA stands for. It's the one of the American Rescue Act, a significant federal investment in local governments and ability to conduct economic development initiatives. One that we're keenly interested in is broadband. The county had kind of a bucket of money that they were expecting to deliver. And as we are trying to continually build out our broadband, that ARPA money is the clearest pathway for us to extend and complete our network. It comes with the fewest strings attached and the least opportunities for the telecoms to compete and limit where we build. And so I would just like to get an update from them on what is the timeline for getting that money delivered and when can we start putting it to use?
Got it. I'll inquire. And Gina will do an update in September on broadband. She just wasn't able to be here tonight.
Yeah, it's on the September 6th agenda.
Okay, great. And then the last one, I'm just tracking some of the other federal money that is coming through. It looks like we're on a pathway to see some climate-focused money coming through the federal government with the Senate passing the most recent legislation. And one thing it looks like we'll see in there is some money for investments in clean tech development hubs. And I really think we have a number of the ingredients here already in our community with solar, battery manufacturing, and others. And I think it would be great if our team could start thinking about ways that we can invest in a cluster to encourage more of that type of development and activate some of that federal money that we expect to be coming. We'll have a number of other proposals that we'll be able to think about in relation to the airport and elsewhere. But I think it's so exciting we have this cluster of industry, and it can be something our community is really known for in the future, and be important part of our job base. So we'll keep tracking that legislation as it winds its way through and starts getting partitioned out. That's it for me.
Commissioner Briscoe?
No, I'm saving my stuff for when I get home. There's nothing urgent.
All right, and I have nothing either. Are you guys okay if I adjourn the meeting now? Meeting adjourned.
Whatever your pleasure is.